Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Power Sessions with Natasha. I wanted us today to talk about the education of our children, the education that currently our children are having, why it's important to change that, because Eurocentric education handicaps and poisons the African child's mind. So much of what we are taught in school is false and misleading that our African children are beginning life literally mentally handicapped. This includes young people of all races as well, because the way that they are taught is the way they view other people. While the truth heals and sets people free, lies and distortions bring destruction and bondage. This is the real source of the pain and suffering of man's humanity and man's inhumanity to man. And this is the reason it must be addressed today in modern day of where we are living. Some people are waiting for this to happen, maybe in the future. No, the education should start now. History books, if we look at history books worldwide, in every school, textbook, everywhere you go, they promote the belief that the most important developments in the world history are traceable to Europe. For most of us, our knowledge of history dates back to ancient Greece and Rome. The biggest lie that was ever told. The reason for the obvious slant in that history is written from the perspective of who? It favors whoever wrote it, the conquering and ruling class. That is why Greeks didn't discover anything. They stole it from ancient Egypt. A lot of people, when you're in school, most of the history starts with Greeks. No, let's stop that with our children. It's evident that the major aim of these people is to do what? To paint the picture of their historical pursuits in the finest of light possible by any means necessary. However, as they are doing that, are we fighting back with our children and teaching them by any means necessary their history? In fact, if we look at the golden age in the history of us as melanated people, as African people, the age in which we reach the pinnacle of glory that is so dazzling in achievements that Western and Arab writers felt so compelled and so threatened to erase it by just the sheer power of their position and begin Black history when in writing 3,000 years later. Unbelievable. We as Black people, we as Africans dominated the globe at some point. An example is how the Ethiopians occupied all the south coast of both Asia and Africa. Yes, our brothers, our Ethiopian brothers. I will be doing a video about that, covering those kings who resided in those areas. Going back to education, these curriculums that we have cause white young people to have a very distorted view of their African classmates and peers. It causes them to view them as less valuable and are people to feel disdainful, people you constantly look at and think, oh my goodness, what is it like to be like them? They never achieved anything. They never did anything. All we ever did was conquer them. On the contrary, as that white child is thinking that, it makes our children, our African children, feel inferior. Why? Because of the history they are being taught. Eurocentric education is unhealthy for us and for white people. For that reason, any curriculum that doesn't teach the truth should be unacceptable at all, especially for our children, because our children are our future. We cannot keep building our history and our future on lies. If we truly educate our children, much of our issues as a society, as Black people, as African people, would minimize. Problems of self-esteem among our young people would literally begin to vanish, because the knock-on effect of not feeling worthy is you don't view the same people who look like you as worthy too, because you come from the same history, and you see it in youth on youth violence, it happens. Why? They don't value themselves, so they don't value the people that look like them. History has been kind to Europeans because they have written it in many instances. It has been the fiction agreed upon. It is their little fiction, their little puppet that they control. This is how the narrative has been. No, we waited in darkness for Europeans to bring the light. Wow, LOL. Really? If we don't tackle this, our children will be uninspired by just being who they are. Just by being an African person, they are uninspired and they will loathe it. Teach them about Marcus Garvey, Fela Kuti, all the greats we have. We have many greats in our history, men, women. Our people didn't sit there waiting to be rescued by Wilberforce. Don't let that be the narrative that they learn. Some of you may be thinking, where do I start? Because African history is so broad. Where do I go? What do I do? The study of the history of Africa should begin in Egypt, in my own personal opinion. Yes, we could start in other places, we surely could. The reason why I say this is because more of their indestructible monuments are there, and because that many of the artifacts that archaeologists have been uncovering in the last century are in fact of people who look like us, melanated people, black people like us. The Egyptians of today are not the same people as the ancient Kemites of 5,000 years ago. The ancient Kemites looked like me and you, had hair like ours. But the truth is, if Europeans acknowledge that ancient Egypt was a black African civilization, it would mean that we'd have to acknowledge that the concepts and doctrines of Christianity are ancient black African creations that they took, remixed, and handed back to our people. This is every indications that Egyptians or Kemetics who built advanced civilizations of Egypt were indigenous African people. Because why? Of the dark hue of this beautiful crown of hair that they had when they described them. If starting with Egypt is too much for you, start with individuals. Look at individuals from every country on the continent and the diaspora that were great. Then move on to groups of people. Then from groups of people, you can move on to kingdoms. Then move on to other topics. You will not run out of anything to teach your children. You will not run out of what to teach your child. Never. Because our history is too rich. It's too broad. There is resources out there. Or listen to my podcast, Power Sessions with Natasha. If you can't be bothered to read a book or you're not such a good reader, we know not everybody's a very good reader. Listen, find materials, use that to teach your children. Let's begin and stop talking whilst in our own homes we are not teaching our kids what we are preaching or need to happen. We can't keep saying, oh, we've got to have African schools, we've got to teach African history. Are you doing it? Are you doing it right now at home? Understand that you can read. Your ancestors were not allowed to read on slave plantations wherever they were because they knew the power of reading and teaching. It expands the dimensions of your thoughts, your mind, and what you know. And our unity through knowing our true history threatens their very survival. But this has to happen. Free the minds of our children. Teach them the truth. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. And don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.